The Texans are filling the void at wide receiver after losing wide receiver Tank Dell to an ACL tear and a dislocated kneecap. They go out and claim Diontae Johnson off of waivers. This is huge. I was actually in the middle of recording a what if Diontae goes to Houston, and then they just signed him out of nowhere. So first thing I want to touch on is they officially confirmed Tank Dell will undergo season-ending surgery. We knew it was bad. He tore his ACL. There might be some other damage. We're not 100% sure. But he is going to undergo season-ending surgery, dislocated kneecap, ACL tear. And now, what did the Texans do? Nick Caserio goes out and he gets guys to help CJ Stroud, Diontae Johnson, a huge addition. And we'll talk about why this could benefit the Texans, but also could very well come back to haunt them. So first thing we can mention here is Diontae's been on a path. The past year, he's been on now 3 different teams. He played for the Steelers last year. They shipped him off to the Panthers for a 3rd-round pick and Diontae Jackson. Then the Panthers midseason did not like the way he was handling everything in the locker room. They traded him for a pick swap to the Ravens, basically nothing. Then on the Ravens, he decides, I'm not going to play in the Eagles game. They suspend him as a disciplinary action. And then right before this game against the Steelers this Saturday, they cut him. Now he clears waivers. By Monday, the Texans say, hey, let's go out and fill our need for Tank Dell. Unfortunately, the Texans have had major injuries this year. They went out and got Stephon Diggs. Hopefully that was going to resolve the wide receiver room. He unfortunately tore his ACL. Then Tank Dell, he stepped up in a big way until the knee injury happened. So not good stuff there, but this was huge. The wide receiver room was only Nico Collins and maybe John Mechie or Xavier Hutchinson would step up. But I think Diontae Johnson brings such a talented, I believe he's a very talented number 2 who will fit very well behind Nico Collins. Now, Collins, big 6'4", tall receiver. Deontay's great crossing route, slant. And what he did on the Panthers, if they can find a way to mix him into this system, this team could do well. Now, the question is, how long is Diontae going to take to get used to this new offense? That's probably my biggest concern. And the fact that he's had a history of being bad, he's had a bad presence in the locker room. That was probably the number one reason I didn't think that this was going to happen. Now, am I happy with it? Yes. I am slightly surprised. As soon as I saw Tank Dell go down, I saw everyone on X, everyone tweeting, hey, let's go get Diontae Johnson. Why not? Because there were people saying, usually I'd have no interest in Diontae. And I'd agree because of the locker room struggles, but after Tank goes down, what do you have to lose? Here's the problem. This is the only reason this will come back to hurt the Texans. If you're trying to barrel your way into the playoffs and have momentum, and say the Texans didn't sign him, right? Hey, we trust our guys Xavier Hutchinson and John Mechie. They've been here with us the whole season. We're going to trust them to get the job done. If they said that, they could go into the playoffs mentally. Confidence is through the roof. And this is where Diontae could stall the momentum. If he starts complaining about playing time and doesn't want to play on the field like he did with the Ravens, that could be a big problem. And we know how CJ Stroud dealt with the Tank Dell injury and how emotional he was and how much he cares about his players. That was his best friend, right? Talked about the Tank Dell update last video if you want to check it out. But just looking at this situation, Diontae Johnson could be a problem in terms of how he handles himself in the locker room because there's already a past history of it. Now, are we getting a talented wide receiver? The answer is yes. Looking at his games on the Panthers, he was the number 1 guy. And I'll bring up his stats real quick. First off, Hutchinson, like I said, Mechie, neither of those guys are necessarily a number 2. Diontae is an all-pro wide receiver. He's not great, but in terms of what's on the waiver wire right now, in terms of who we can sign, it's either him or OBJ, and I'd much rather Diontae Johnson than Odell Beckham Jr. A lot of people are like, why would they sign this guy? It really is not a bad idea. Because the worst thing that happens is what I said before, the locker room stuff. He drives the morale of the team down, and that is the only thing would be even slightly considering. Now, in terms of his stats, the past 2 teams he's been on, obviously he didn't work out on the Ravens. But on the Panthers, he actually had some solid games with Andy Dalton. And showing that with a veteran quarterback, now Stroud, he is in his second year, but if he's able to get a connection with him early, because the thing with Andy Dalton was he had a 100-yard game. The 3 games he had touchdowns in. You see the stats right here. 357 yards. It doesn't look like the best season, but through 7 games to get 400 yards, I'd say that's pretty good. And especially when 2-3 of those games you get 20-ish yards. But like here's the games I'm looking at right here. September 22nd against Vegas. 8 catches, 122 yards, a touchdown. 678. 7 for 83. So he's had good games, and with him over the middle, I think he could fill right in for Tank Dell. I'm hoping he plays against the Ravens this Wednesday, because there's no reason the Texans shouldn't just throw him in there. Now, I'm concerned. Do they do what the Ravens did and slowly progress him into the system, right? The Steelers did the same thing with Mike Williams. That might actually annoy Johnson, because he's been annoyed with past situations and past teams. He just wants to play. Put me in there. And the second the Ravens slowed him in to get adjusted to the playbook, he was like, oh, I'm not getting enough playing time. He started complaining. So the last thing you want to see is Johnson complain. And when you already clinched the division, you're not likely to move up in the standings. He may not know the playbook. He may look lost out there. But honestly, the only way you learn is if you throw him out there and play. You can't sit a quarterback for 4 or 5 years, especially when you signed him to help out the receiver room to win now. I don't think there's any reason why he shouldn't play versus the Ravens. I understand they signed him Monday. He'll practice Tuesday, play Wednesday, probably not. He'll probably play I don't even think he'll play, but the biggest thing here is getting him on the ground and running, ready to go for the postseason. And the last thing I want to see is Johnson barely play the regular season, and then come the postseason, he's this locker room nutcase who doesn't want to be there, and he's driving the team down. This is the thing. This is the reason I thought the Texans weren't going to sign Johnson, was mainly because of the Texans not normally bringing in these kind of diva-like players, right? They did. Now, Stephon Diggs, I think, was a different case, because they went out and traded for him for the Bills, and everyone thought he was going to be, oh, give me the ball, give me the ball. And he actually settled into the leadership role really nicely. I feel like a whole change of character happened for Diggs, and then unfortunately he had that injury. Now Tank Dell is no longer the number 2 with the knee injury this Saturday versus the Chiefs. Diontae's not a bad fit. He really isn't. And to have John Mechie and Xavier Hutchinson sub in and out for a slot type of receiver role, I mean, Hutchinson's kind of not like the build of a slot guy, but even Robert Woods, those kinds of guys you want to see rotating in as the number 3. But as the number 2, it's definitely scary. Now, the Texans also signed wide receiver Steven Sims off of the waiver wire. So Steven Sims he's a former return guy, specialist, but he can fill into the role there as well. The main thing here is Diontae Johnson. And the biggest thing that I'm excited for is to see how the Texans approach the rest of the season. Because I really do believe they should just throw him out there, throw him to the Wolves, see what he can do. Because why not? The Texans have nothing to lose. And that was the thing with this comment earlier. Although it wouldn't be in my best interest to go out and get Diontae Johnson, honestly, if Tank Dell never got hurt, they wouldn't even consider this. But now you have a very slim wide receiver room. You have to do something. And this move, I absolutely love. At first, I was this comment right here. I was on the fence. I was like, Diontae Johnson, because of what he's been through the past year and all the locker room problems. But now you think about it, it really isn't that bad of an idea, because he comes to a team that's already established. no wide receiver 2 or 3 really, but the Texans have had those struggles in the past where Nico Collins was out, Tank Dell even missed some time, and you had a receiver room of John Mechie, Xavier Hutchinson, and it was Robert Wood. It was just a bunch of I don't want to say no one, but when you have Nico Collins and Tank Dell in and out of the lineups, that was already a struggle in the past of Stroud to find targets. So Diontae, bring him in, settle him in for the first game. I doubt he plays, but I feel like it'd be such a good idea to just throw him to the Wolves and see what he could do. I'm so excited to see what Diontae Johnson can bring to this team. I know the off the field, the locker room troubles, the diva-like mentality. I'm not playing. Give me enough playing time. I understand that might be the biggest problem, and he could drive the morale of this team down. This is the only skeptical reason I didn't think they were going to sign him. And it was just crazy, crazy stuff. So Diontae signs with the Texans. Big, big news. I would say this has got to be the move the Texans needed to make in order to make a playoff run, because once Dell got hurt, that kind of just like makes it feel like that hurts. Especially, I talked about Dell already, but the injury he faced earlier this season with the gunshot wound, as well as last year with the foot injury again. So just crazy, crazy stuff all around. But officially, Diontae Johnson is a Houston Texan. We'll see. We got the Ravens Wednesday. We'll do a preview video on that. But let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments. I'm a big fan of this signing. I was skeptical at first, but I have to know what you guys think. Is he a good enough player to be a number 2? I trust and believe Diontae can elevate this Texans offense and open up so much more over the middle for CJ Stroud if you have your Alpha X wide receiver in Nico Collins. So thank you everyone so much for watching. Diontae Johnson to the Texans. Excited to see what he can do. But until next time, we'll see you in the next video.